it's very strange standing up here after being at Thinking Digital for so many years in the audience where you currently are. So Herb's asked me to talk to you today about crypto in 15 minutes flat. Challenge accepted. Let's see how we go. So I know this is a very polarizing topic, and for a lot of people, it is absolutely the preserve of criminals, money launderers, it's full of scams, it is an existential threat to the planet. This is the kind of thinking that's made Wikipedia decide they're not going to take donations in crypto anymore, and it's given a lot of the regulators around the world pause for thought. On the other side, we have the crypto community, with all of that impenetrable jargon, the hashtags. It really is a barrier to entry, actually, to the space. And we have the Bitcoin maximalists. I really worry about my cat. They have their laser eyes on their Twitter profiles, and they are determined that Bitcoin will reach $100 million in value. And they wave away all the climate concerns and talk of renewables and volcano power and nuclear energy and so on. Crypto is a completely bonkers place. And I'm very aware of the irony of standing here telling you that you need to know about this stuff, and for you and for your businesses, right in the middle of the biggest crypto crash since probably, well, the last one, I guess. So, I mean, I do hold cryptocurrency, I do hold NFTs. I mean, if I wouldn't be standing here knowing about it if I didn't. But I don't particularly go for trading as a rule. I'm far more interested in the innovation itself and the technology that it's spawning and the things that we're able to do. So how did I actually end up down this rabbit hole? It really is a rabbit hole. Well, in a galaxy far, far away, I was once an accountant. I started my training at Northumbrian Water in the week it privatised in 1989. But I was always the accountant who could do tech. So I did the payroll and ran the servers, and I did the books, and I looked after the Unix box. And eventually I just pivoted completely into tech. So there I was in 2010, and I heard this thing about Bitcoin. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But I had 2 children under the age of 4. My mother had just gone into a care home with Alzheimer's. I had a really shaky startup, and I had absolutely no time or energy for something that you could buy a pizza with 10,000 of them. Yeah. So 5 years later, fast forward, and a prospective client did me a really good favour and said, I don't want to use your software, I'm going to use Ethereum. And I went, what the hell is Ethereum? And I went off and looked at it and went, wait, I get this. This is a ledger. My accountant brain went, I know exactly what I am looking at now. And I was completely and utterly hooked, fascinated, and I haven't looked back. So I'm hooked on it, but why should you care? Well, you should care because it is absolutely going mainstream. 10% of the world's adults hold crypto. Those are figures from January this year from We Are Social. So the chances are your suppliers, your clients and so on are already using it. It's worth a look to see how that can benefit you and them. It has a $1.9 trillion market cap. That means absolutely nothing until you realise that's about half of Amazon. So these things are valuable. So you need to know about it to keep your assets safe and to understand how much this is growing and what an impact it's going to have. And you also need to know about the technology that's coming through from crypto, because there is a competitive advantage to be had, and the early adopters are harnessing that competitive advantage. And there are some big gains to understanding this space. I've galloped ahead and gone, crypto is wonderful. And I know that in this room there will be people who have absolutely no idea where it came from, or a little bit shaky about what this stuff is. So I'm going to dive back to basics very quickly. So we go a long, long way back, actually. And so the journey to crypto started around about the late 70s with the work of cryptographers like Ralph Merkle, who put in place the mathematical foundations upon which crypto and blockchain rely. And over the following 30 years, there was this move towards, can can we achieve a peer-to-peer digital cash system? And the idea was that if we had no governments, if we had no central banks, who could we trust to keep a ledger of transactions? How would we pay people? How would we contract with people? It's not for nothing that the movement was called the crypto-anarchists, I have to say. And so what Bitcoin did was to come up with a way of achieving this, a way that you could trust the ledger without having to trust the person who was maintaining it. So you could trust the message and not the messenger. So how do they do this? Well, all of the transactions that are put into the Bitcoin network are validated by the network, by the peers of the network. And so they're checking that all the bells and whistles are correct and you haven't put it through 3 times so that everyone can go to the pub. And all the valid transactions are put together in a list, and they're rolled up into a little teeny tiny string of data called the Merkle roots. That's our Ralph Merkle from the 70s. And then this sits in a block, and that block has a reference to the previous block, and so on and so on. So you literally have a chain of blocks of transactions. It is a blockchain. Very straightforward. And what it means is that you can't sneakily go back and change something, because you'd have to change all the subsequent blocks as well. So that gives it some of its security and its unchangeable immutability. It's really been the preserve of tech people for the last decade or so, particularly, I guess, UK and Europe, because we honestly don't need crypto. What has cryptocurrency done for us? Well, not a huge amount. We've got financial stability. We've got monetary stability. So we know that a loaf of bread's going to cost about the same next week as it does today. We know that we can go to the bank, we can get a loan, we can get a mortgage, we can get trade finance, but not everybody is in the same position with all our glorious fintech and smartphones and so on. Other people do need crypto. I'm going to be very clear here, countries do not need crypto. Countries going, we're going to adopt Bitcoin, it makes all the headlines, but if you scratch the surface, it really is not good news. El Salvador is really struggling to keep hold of its economy. All their much vaunted digital wallets some of them are being used, but they've all got dollars in. Central African Republic, oh God, they have the worst online, the smallest online population of anyone outside North Korea. That doesn't bode well either. But individuals, people who need to circumvent the system, people who have been let down by their own economy. Few anecdotes, I guess. I taught a Nigerian student last year who sponsored his own master's by trading crypto. So using his skills to change his life. I had a Venezuelan colleague a few years ago who introduced me to her colleagues who were using Bitcoin because they had the tools and the knowledge to do so, to protect themselves from the crumbling Venezuelan economy. So they were saving their salaries in Bitcoin because it was less volatile than the Bolivar. and they were transferring money backwards and forwards across borders to family and friends. It wasn't as widespread as is potentially reported, but it definitely was going on. During COVID in the Philippines, which is actually a very, very mature online country, a lot of use of online learning, of the internet and online gaming, people did turn to crypto in lots of different ways. They have around 20% crypto ownership in that country. Some people were using online exchanges to buy commodities to resell because they could no longer go to physical foreign exchanges on the ground. Others turned to gaming and were earning money through playing games when their shops were closed, particularly Axie Infinity they were playing. And they were able to pay their rent and to buy food and medicine. So that weathering economic storms, circumventing the system, a lot of benefit to be had. But it is true that this is not the preserve of honest people. Are there criminals in crypto? Yes, there are a lot of criminals in crypto. Wherever there is money, there are going to be criminals. So there are scams and schemes absolutely everywhere. Hopefully the current crash is flushing quite a few of them out. But One little point is that the law enforcement agencies can read a transparent ledger as easily as the next person. And we have this traceable money that people can follow to its destination. Remember, online crime is nothing new either. I remember Mika Hipponen here at Thinking Digital a few years ago talking about the first Trojan that was circulated in 1989 on a 5.25-inch floppy disk. And for the ransom for that had to be paid in dollars by post to an address in Panama. So Bitcoin's just made it easier to collect the money. There was a massive hack in March where $600 million worth of assets were stolen. And when it started to move, everyone was watching it, and they've traced some straight to North Korea. They've recovered some as it went through the exchanges. The stuff that goes through privacy coins, that's more like used fivers, that's for another day. But it is a lot easier to trace. I have mentioned criminals, so I may as well touch on the other elephant in the room, which is climate change. And the impact that Bitcoin has. Yes, it's a problem. Bitcoin mining emits around about 1,200 kilograms of carbon per transaction, not per block, per transaction. It is a massive problem. The reason for this is that randomization of closing the block. It's a great system because you're paying people to secure the chain, but you've got this game of hungry hippos going on all of the time. People trying to get the Bitcoin reward and hooray! And it's just not going to work in the long term. We have moved on considerably, though. Modern cryptocurrencies are faster, they are cleaner, and the evolution of them is extraordinary. So faster. Bitcoin runs at around about 7 transactions per second. We're on to thousands now with modern crypto. This is kind of rivaling the Visa network. Visa runs at about 2,000 transactions per second. But of course, with Visa, it takes a couple of days for all of the transactions to go through the bank ledgers. With crypto, it just settles straight away in seconds. It's a lot cleaner. A transaction on a proof-of-stake blockchain, you're looking at fractions of a gram of carbon emissions. And the evolution is just stunning because from coins, we are moving on to a whole different world of crypto assets. Things that are traceable, they're ownable, they can hold data, and they confer rights on the owner. So how are these changing the world? Few examples for you. Supply chains is a huge one. So if we look at supply chains for commodities that are produced by the tiny producers of fruit and vegetables and so on, what's blockchain doing for them? Well, we have durian fruit that are twinned with an NFT. They have an NFT, a token, an ownable token, a coin, that represents that durian fruit. And it gathers data through its life. It shows that it was in a good condition when it left the village, but it got bashed about a bit when it was being transported. So when it gets to the market and it's rotten, you can claim on the insurance of the transporter, not the farmer. So it's improving that life. It's giving an audit trail to mitigate risk for access to trade finance. We've got crops being followed through another system, through the AgriLedger system, where the farmers no longer have to simply sell to the guy who picks them up. They can all collaborate and get a better price. And they've improved the revenues for those farmers by a 7.5 multiplier, which is just insane. We also have financial things. So there's the access to trade finance, but there is also the asset invoice itself is an NFT, and that can be sold to give people invoice discounting. And even the US Bureau of the Fiscal Service starting to use tokens for grant funding. So there's all this, suddenly we've gone from Bitcoin all the way to durian fruit, mangoes, grant funding, artwork, ticket stubs, game pieces. There is this sudden blurring that we're seeing of the physical and of the digital. We have digital goods in a physical world. We have physical goods in a digital world, with luxury goods that are being traced for provenance, with digital goods that are conferring rights on the owner to give them a physical asset. And it's this extraordinary melange that is giving us the Web3 power. The idea that crypto assets are really at the base of our virtual world. But that's the metaverse, and that is a talk for a different day. Thank you.
Thank you. It's right. Okay, so there's a lot to talk about. So just some points of clarification first. So in terms of Bitcoin and its problems regarding the environment, so am I to understand that what's driving it is that the Bitcoin ecosystem provides incentives for people? Is this all the mining?
It's literally baked into the original white paper that people will expend energy in order to have the right to close a block. Yeah.
Okay, and so I assume many people around the world are engaged in this activity, which is what's driving the amount of energy consumption that supports that system.
Absolutely right, yes.
Okay, great. And so hence, other cryptocurrencies don't have that incentive system baked in?
They have a different incentive system baked in, yes. They have a different voting system, so they can randomize in a different way. So that could be, who's got the most tokens right now in a pool? You can close the block, and you can do this one, and you can do this one. So it's pushing out and selecting rather than people fighting to be selected. Interesting,
okay. So, thank you for addressing some of the issues, but let's assume. I get the sense overall you're a cryptocurrency optimist.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, fantastic. So, let's go advance 20 years into the future, or even 10 years, or in the case of crypto, it could be 2 days, right? So,
yes.
And let's assume that we've migrated away from. So, is your suggestion that, first of all, just again to clarify, that we will over time move away from Bitcoin as being the dominant currency?
Yes, Bitcoin I think always has a place because it is the ultimate decentralized currency. I think it's always going to be a backstop for people who need it. But in terms of day-to-day use and the amount of applications that are now arriving on a decentralized platform, Bitcoin will not handle all of those. It has its place, though.
So I recently, I sat next to someone at a Newcastle University dinner from Lloyd's, and he was talking about the idea of, I guess, national digital currencies.
Yes.
He was talking about Bitcoin, was the example he talked about. And do you see those as having a significant future, or as fundamentally flawed?
Oh no, they have a significant future because I don't know how many people know this, but the money that you've got in your bank account is private money made by the banks. The money that you have in your wallet is public money, and the only public money is the notes, the actual physical notes issued by the Bank of England. So what the central banks are looking at, and it's not just Bitcoin, it's every country is looking at this, and some are quite far advanced, is can they get the same kind of digital qualities that crypto has and bake that into your £20 note or whatever. So have a digital note. So that's distinct from what you have in your bank account. And there's all sorts of possibilities about how you could program that, for instance, and how you can trace it and how you can manage it.
Okay, cool. Final question before we need to move on. So going back to this imaginary 20 years or whatever into the future, I guess, how would you expect life to be different? How would you see, so if we were to fast forward, any sense of, it doesn't have to, I'm not expecting you to illustrate everything, but certainly an area you would think, wow, this will almost certainly be different.
In terms of crypto and blockchain
kind of thing? The progression of all these things happen, how does that translate itself? Because at the end of your talk, you talked about the merger, if you will, between the digital and physical.
I think we will have an expectation that we will understand that we can have memorabilia and we can have ownership of digital things, and that will become a completely normal thing. And we will have that blurring of, I've bought this digital file and I can now print my physical house from it. So just all of this I guess, immersion in the digital to augment the physical.
Okay, and just one final. So there's been a lot of discussion about NFTs, non-fungible tokens.
Yep.
And obviously both a lot of pro and as well as a lot of skepticism, or at least I don't get it. Are you expecting NFTs to be something that will actually have a significant place in our future, or at least
100%, yes. It's possibly the most exciting development of crypto because they have such application from the very basis of industry and finance and so on, all the way through creatives, all the way through. It really is the most phenomenal innovation.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we'll come and find you during the break to find out more.
I'll be
Kate,
there.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.